What is good, everybody? It's Luther Wilson III on another YouTube video doing a real estate series, all right? So for those that don't know, I'm a real estate pro here in the Kansas City market, representing for Upside Property Services and the affiliate companies, all right? So over the last 14 years or so, I've been investing and working closely with other real estate investors, placing capital and getting to it here in the Kansas City area. Most of my focus has been on residential single-family home investments. We've done some short-term stuff, wholesale, hotel, fix and flip, but most of what I've been focused on and where we've seen the best success is with the buy and hold, long-term cash flow investments, using some creative financing as part of that, okay? So I've been doing a series the last few months, digging in a little bit deeper, talking about some of my experience and what it's like to invest in real estate and help other people do it, okay? And I've been talking about three major things, all right? I've been talking about capital, I've been talking about strategy, and I've been talking about operations, okay? And so my background is in property management and sales. I've worked closely with quite a few contractors over the years as well. And so that's the operations part that I, got a handle on early on in my career, okay? And so it wasn't until a handful of years ago that I started to take a deeper dive into the capital aspects, looking at private capital, private equity, and the different types of funding and financing that is available, not just for real estate investors, but for business owners and entrepreneurs, because the reality is, as real estate investors, we're business owners, okay? And our product, our service deals with real property, the real estate, okay? And so in today's video, I want to dig in a little bit deeper into the strategy a bit, as well as the operations, okay? So okay, if you like what you're hearing, if you dig my vibe and you want to learn more, definitely take a look at some of my previous videos. Go ahead and hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and feel free to send me a message. Hit me up in the comments if you want to talk shop, or if you got something cool you want to share, you got feedback. That's cool to me as well. Okay, so for real estate investors, especially here in the Kansas City market, I'll kind of stay with that, and it'll definitely apply, to you or whoever you're working with, in various markets, but I'm definitely going to refer to Kansas City and some of my experience, all right? And so I'll tell you what, I want to start, let's assume that you have access to a certain amount of capital, okay? And let's also suppose that you are able to qualify for funding if you so choose, if you decide that you want to use leverage in the form of, it could be hard money or some type of short-term debt, or it could be some type of long-term financing. Let's assume that you have that sorted out on the front end, okay? And by the way, for all of my partners that I've worked with, I shouldn't say all, but for most of my partners and virtually all of my clients that I've had over the last 14 years, we started off with some type of money, and one of us had the ability to borrow, okay? So let's assume that that's where you're starting, because I think it's gonna make sense anyway. So, all right, you got some capital that's liquid that you could utilize. You or your business partner or an associate of yours can qualify for funding or financing, all right? Then, okay, you've probably decided that, okay, we're gonna do fix and flip, right? Or you're gonna do buy and hold of some type. That's really it, all right? So when it comes to the operations and the strategy, determining how you can or how you are going to acquire that property is key. And there's only a handful of ways to acquire a property. And we'll use a single family home, Kansas City, as reference in this video, okay? So buy and hold, fix and flip, okay? Those are two, what it comes down to, right? There's different variations and methods to be able to do it. But you're either gonna go in with straight cash, right? Or you're gonna go in with some type of short-term loan, okay? Or you're gonna go in with some type of long-term financing, right? And I'll throw a fourth in there. The long-term financing could be existing financing that you take over, okay? Or it could be financing that you get with the seller. You negotiate and set that up with the seller. That's really it. Those are the ways that you're going to acquire the property. So depending on what you're wanting to do and depending on the opportunity, and this very well could change after you buy the property or partway through the renovation type of thing, all right? So those are the 4 ways that you can basically acquire the property. Then from there, right? A lot of times investors, we want to do fixer-uppers because that's where we see an opportunity to do value add. We see an opportunity to create a spread, and then we can go from there type of thing, all right? So the 4 ways that you could acquire the house or the property, and then you're either gonna do fix and flip or buy and hold, okay? So then from there, you're looking at, okay, I mentioned value add. You're either gonna do a value add or you're gonna do turnkey, which would be a property that is livable or it's ready to go, or it might need little to nothing in the way of upgrades or repairs. Are you with me? So that's basically it. You got the 4 methods or so, approximately, ways that you could acquire the property. You got buy and hold or fix and flip, right? And then you got either a house that's a fixer-upper or a property that needs upgrades and repairs, or you got one that is ready to go and it needs nothing or little to nothing in the way of upgrades and repairs. That's basically it. So I want to dig in because there's a lot of misconceptions and misunderstandings when it comes to business in general, let alone real estate, what it's like to own property, and the real estate investing, the operations aspect when you're taking on renovations and you're doing management and you're running a business. There's a lot of misunderstandings, and you guys got to understand, my background is somewhat extensive, and I grew up in the real estate space. So my mom and dad, they're still active today in one way or another. They've been doing it for 30 plus years. And so since I was 5 years old, I got to see how they moved and how they operated in their business and their sales and their operations, and how they dealt with capital and so forth. So I feel like this is part of my mission to be able to get, more investors and more everyday people aware of what it's like, okay? And again, part of what I want to do here is to educate and inspire and collaborate with some of y'all out there. Besides me just promoting myself and my business and so forth, I really enjoy this type of thing. And so my perspective is all right, I've seen the ins and outs of real property operations, capital strategy, and so forth. And I want to be able to get more awareness around that. Some people may refer to it as financial literacy, understanding, the capital and financing has been huge for me. I've seen how it's impacted my business and my clients as well. So hopefully some of y'all can tap into that and save yourselves lots of headaches, perhaps some heartaches, maybe save some money so you don't have to lose money or lose as much money, okay? And you can get to it in a manner that doesn't necessarily take you 5, 10, 15, 20 years like it's taken me and some of my clients type of thing, all right? So I mentioned the ways that you could buy a property, mentioned some of the ways that you could do that, right? Now, when it comes to the operations, right? Getting into a fixer-upper property, okay? And okay, by the way, today is Wednesday, February 12th, 2025. And there have been some rather dramatic shifts in the market, okay? We're in first quarter 2025. We have a new administration in office. Interest rates have gone up, okay, over the last 2-3 years. We're dealing with low inventory. We're dealing with high inflation, and we're dealing with a lot of things happening here in America and across the globe geopolitically, right? So I'm hoping that this will also encourage and inspire some of y'all out there to prepare for what's to come, okay? So, and I don't necessarily, I'm not planning on waiting, and I'm hoping that some of y'all don't wait either, because there's opportunities out there right now. And if you have a better understanding of how all of the aspects work together, the capital, the strategy, and the operations, then you could put yourself in a position to succeed, hopefully, you know, sustainable and for the long term as well, type of thing. All right, so a lot of us investors, we think that we have to do fixer-upper properties. Well, that's a myth. We don't have to. And I want to help dispel that myth by digging into some of the nuts and bolts of the operations and how that might look, and to get y'all to think about why investors do what we do, type of thing. All right, so if you're going in and you're buying a single family home in and around Kansas City, okay, and you are planning to do, let's say, repairs on your scope of work that you or your contractor, your property manager got or put together, let's say the estimate is $60,000, and that includes labor and material, okay? And, you know, we like B-class, some C-class single family homes. Let's say you have an opportunity, to buy a $200,000 home, okay, or single family investment property, right? Okay, $200,000 after repair value single family home investment, okay? The repair estimates are $60,000, okay? So I'm guessing that some of y'all are already involved in real estate, or you've done some research, or you've been to a seminar or a workshop, or read a book or two, or listened to podcasts, or you're on a online forum, something like that. So you have a general idea, right? That $200,000 home, most investors are going to try to be all in, meaning all in cost for the purchase and renovation at around 70-75% of the after repair value. Okay, so you might, on that $200,000 home, you're going to try to be all in around $150,000, right? So in that case, if the scope of work is, you know, the total repairs, materials, and labor is around 60 grand, you're going to want to buy that property, or at least your maximum allowable offer may be what, $90,000, right? So that, you know, if you can find that in Kansas City, and you plan on going forward, and you're wanting to do fix and flip, okay, and you're going in with straight cash, or you're going in with short-term debt of some sort, it doesn't necessarily have to be a hard money loan, but it's some type of short-term debt where you have 6 to 12 months to get through the renovation and then to resell that property, okay? So if you didn't know, like, in the real world, it's not like HGTV, virtually every single project goes over budget and past the deadline, right? So you gotta factor that in there, or maybe even pad your numbers a little bit, or give yourself some cushions or some breathing room for those overages, because there's a very good chance, not in all cases, but in most of them, that you're gonna go over budget. So that 60 grand, which you thought you were gonna spend on the renovation, could end up being $70,000. It could be $85,000, $90,000. Well, that happens quite often. In fact, I'd venture to say, maybe not to the extent where it's $80,000 to $90,000, where you thought it was gonna be 60, but in almost every case, you're going over budget, most investors, okay? So you gotta be prepared and think about What's that going to look like? Are you prepared, okay, to be able to support that? Meaning that additional capital reserves is huge. So that's a key part of the operations, right? So besides the fix and flip, which is great, like I know a lot of investors that have done really well with it. I've done okay with it. I prefer to do buy and hold. Okay, so these are things that you got to be mindful of, right? The opportunity, the risk, the reserves. How much is that money costing? If you're going to leverage somehow using short-term debt of some sort, you got to factor in not just the overages for the holding costs and the renovation and incidentals that come up, okay? You also need to factor in the cost of the money, because if you're leveraging and using borrowed money on a short-term basis, that money is going to cost usually a higher interest rate. It could be 8, 9, 10%, okay? It could be 15 to 20%. And then I'm talking interest, okay? And then points on top of that, which is basically just additional interest that you have to pay. So the money costs money, right? So the time that you spend doing all this essentially costs money too. So at the end of the day, when I talk about strategy and why I push so hard for buy and hold, is because when you're doing the fix and flip, that's one of the riskiest, low yielding possible types of ways that you could invest in real estate. Yet for various reasons, that's where most of us lean toward, okay? So you gotta figure that out. And look, at the end of the day, if you're investing in real estate, the way I see it, especially if you're doing fix and flip, right? You are basically a construction company. That's how I tend to look at it. And I think that's how a lot of people ought to look at it, is if you're doing renovation and resale or renovation and refi, right? I'll get into that here in a little bit. You're more or less a glorified contractor or a glorified construction company. And really, at the end of the day, that might be how you want to set it up anyway, to where you're getting paid, even if you're not necessarily the contractor or the GC, if you are, the project manager or the operator, owner, operator, however that looks, of that real estate investment fund or firm, getting yourself paid, right? So at least that you know that you're going to get paid something, because at the end of the day, as you go over budget and past the deadline, that's extra time, right? That's extra money, because the borrowed money that you used, right, cost extra because it took longer. And then the overages, the incidentals, the reserves, that sort of thing. So at the end of the day, you got to determine, like, is that really worth it for you? What is your goal? What is your end game for placing capital, for investing your hard-earned money, or investing whoever's money that you're investing? At the end of the day, if you're going to do fix and flip and you end up maybe losing money on the deal or breaking even, or it takes somewhere between 90 days and 9 months, if not longer, to be able to reap the rewards of all that time and energy and work, is that really worth it? Are you even paying yourself to be able to go through that process, whether it's on the front end or along the way, or to oversee the project, however that looks? These are things that investors need to think about. And I'm here to shed some light on it, because my clients and I, my mentors and I, my colleagues and I have been through a lot of different scenarios, and that's a huge part of it. So in fix and flip, okay, cool. Like, if you like the idea of doing renovation projects over and over again, and perhaps you're paying yourself to do that, and you or your business partner, your company, your client, however it's set up, is a little bit more aggressive, and you have deeper pockets, or you're okay potentially losing money or breaking even or make little to nothing on that fix and flip project, then go for it all day long. You're gonna have fun. Just pay yourself. Hopefully you're paying yourself to do that type of thing. That's all I'm saying. So I want hopefully get y'all to think about this whole process, because it's a lot of work. It takes time and energy. Not to mention, just finding the deal, right? And then on the back end, selling the deal. All this stuff takes time. So again, various reasons why I push for long-term buy and hold, cash flow, single family home investments with the use of creative financing somehow, right? Because this stuff is hard, it's work, right? So that's fix and flip, right? And you wonder why lenders do what they do. You wonder why wholesalers and realtors do what they do, because a lot of them know this and they may not necessarily say it, or maybe they don't know how to articulate it, okay? And that's what I'm here to do, to help y'all out so you can see some of the realities of what it's like, again, to own property, to invest in real estate, doing that type of real estate, okay? So that's fix and flip, right? The operations is key. And I'm encouraging y'all to set it up a certain way and make sure that you whoever's involved, if you could swing it, make sure that you're getting yourself paid, and make sure that whoever you're involved with has plenty of money. If you're gonna do it that way, because it's gonna take more time and money and energy than on almost every deal type of thing, all right? So that's the fix and flip, right? Now I wanna talk about the BRRRR strategy, okay? So some of y'all may not be familiar with the BRRRR strategy. Is buy, renovate, rent, refinance, and repeat, okay? So buy, renovate, rent, refinance, and repeat. And this is a strategy that my partners and I have used. I've had plenty of clients that have used it, and a lot of investors today, a lot of my colleagues are using it. It can work very, very well, but you gotta think about all the stuff that I mentioned in regard to the process to do a fix and flip, because it's essentially the same, except you're adding, okay, the refinance part and the rent part, okay? So you're essentially doing a fix and flip, okay? And then you're gonna rent the property and refinance it and hopefully repeat it. So it's even more to the process to do the BRRRR strategy. It's even more stringent, in some cases more stressful, because you got to think about the refinance process, okay? And the additional time and energy that it takes to get through that. Not only are you doing a fix and flip, but you're also needing to qualify and get approved for that long-term financing. And as part of the operations too, now you're dealing with property management, the aspects of that part of the business, okay? Operations, property management, that ties in together, getting the property rented out and then going from there. So the fix and flip, basically, plus the loan, the refi, plus the management, the leasing, and the maintenance and so forth. So that's additional things that you have to think about, right? Are you going to be doing the property management, okay? Or are you going to partner with somebody? I've talked about joint ventures, okay? That's something to think about. Or are you going to do outsourcing, third-party property management? So you're either going to do in-house management somehow, that's you and you're on the ground. Hopefully you're in the same town or living close to where that property is located, so you can get through the rehab process more efficiently and keep an eye on the property and check your contractors and so forth, make sure that they're staying on point. And keeping if you're going to do the in-house management too, so you can be more efficient and getting to the property in a timely manner and that sort of thing. So is that going to be you? Is that going to be your joint venture partner? Or is it going to be a third-party property manager who specializes in doing that sort of thing? Okay, it could work either way. Okay, so just think again, the operations is huge. So with the BRRRR strategy, again, essentially you're doing a fix and flip, but you're adding extra elements. All right, so, and this is gonna tie in together, so stay with me. All right, so you got to think about, okay, what's that really like? All right, so. And again, I talk about this stuff because it all ties in together. The capital, the strategy, and operations. Having an understanding of the capital and the financing is huge, because when you do the fix and flip, right, and then you got to qualify for the new loan, you got to understand what the lender's going to need, and then how much they're going to loan you. When you are doing a refi on an investment property, the maximum amount that the lender will loan you, okay, is going for a cash out refi, that is, right? The maximum amount that the lender is going to loan you in order to do a cash out refi, because that's what a lot of investors attempt to do. That's kind of the idea with the BRRR, so that you don't have money tied up or left in the deal, right? You have all of your initial investment capital back out, then you can, continue moving forward from there. But you got to understand that when you go over budget and you go past the deadline for completion on the renovation, and you have to pay your private money lender or your hard money lender additional money to do that fix and flip, then okay, if on that $200,000 single family home in or around somewhere in Kansas City, the maximum amount that the lender is going to loan you is 75% of the ARV, or after repair value. That's $150,000, okay? So you went over budget, you went past the deadline, okay? You spent up some of your reserves, you had to go reach out to someone else for additional capital, and then come to find out, okay, the lender is only gonna loan a certain amount, so you may very well have to bring additional capital to the refi table, to the closing table when it comes time to do the refi. Do you understand what I'm saying? This is some high level stuff. This is digging in deeper to the operations, what it's like to own and operate a real estate investment fund, or a firm. I keep saying fund someday, right? But this is it. This is what does not get talked about. Okay, so okay, you got to determine, all right, fix it, flip, BRRRR strategy, or turnkey, right? That's what I'm really encouraging investors to look at more so now, is investing, placing capital, saving yourself time and energy, capital, headache, heartache, and investing, maybe not your whole operation, but I'm saying I've helped a number of investors get houses that are ready to go. Of course, the numbers got to make sense, right? For the rent, or if in our case, you're doing like us, you're going to do seller financing on the back end, you got to make sure that the thing cash flows, right? But in the whole thing that I want to mention, right? The whole point of this, talking about this, or one main point for sure, is that at the end of your fix and flip that you are attempting to do the BRRRR on, right? You get through the rehab, you went over budget, past the deadline, it costs more money. Then you got to do the refi, and then you end up bringing more time. Even if you bring money to the table to get the refinance done, right? You might end up being in the same position that you would have been in if you were to just do a turnkey investment, if that makes sense. Okay, I hope y'all are with me. So I'm gonna dig in a little bit more on the single family home in and around Kansas City, $200,000. It's ready to go, or it needs little to nothing in the way of upgrades or repairs. That same $200,000 home, if you buy it turnkey, if you go cash, okay, cool, that's great. And again, I don't know your situation. You got to determine how you're going to play this game, okay? Because if you're going in cash and you have deep enough pockets to where you're okay leaving that capital invested for an extended period of time, okay, cool, that's even less risk for you. But you just got to understand that you're going to have hundreds of thousands of dollars potentially tied up in one investment for the next 3 to 5 years, maybe 10 years or longer, before you'll be able to see all of that back out, right? Assuming that it's going to cash flow, assuming that you're going to receive more from your tenant or resident each month than you're paying on your mortgage, with interest rates at 7-8% for investors. Just saying, y'all, this is stuff you got to think about. So the comparison, the valuation, looking at for buy and hold, the BRRRR strategy versus turnkey. Okay, my whole point is that, like, why I've been pushing for investors to look at Turnkey, and there's different ways to purchase Turnkey, but the simplest, one of the easiest ways to do it is to get that single family home. In our case, in Kansas City, it's $200,000. You're gonna put 20 to 25% of the purchase price as a down payment, and that's gonna be a DSCR. It might be a debt service coverage ratio loan, or it could be another type of non-QM loan, which is a non-qualified mortgage, which the DSCR just so happens to be a non-QM loan. It's just one type of non-qualified mortgage. Okay, did you know that there are various types of non-qualified mortgages? Okay, so you're putting, you're gonna put $40,000 to $50,000 down on that single family home to purchase it. It's ready to go. And you can rent it immediately, or you could do a lease option or some type of seller financing contract for deed, perhaps a true seller carryback immediately. And again, you got to think about this, how you want to play the game, how you want to operate, how you want to use you and your partners or your investors' capital to be able to create wealth if that's what you so choose. Okay, so the BRRRR strategy or Turnkey. And again, one major point that I need to reiterate is that you look at, might be hard to stomach that, putting 20 to 30% down on a house that's ready to go, because we're obsessed with trying to flip the money and we think that's what we have to do, and it seems really cool to rehab houses, which it can be. But you might end up being in a worse position if you do the BRRRR strategy, right? Or you might be in the same position if you did the BRRRR strategy, as opposed to buying a turnkey property and putting 20 to 30% down. You might be in a similar position, right? You got to decide again what type of risk you want to take, how you want to operate your business, what type of capital you have access to, what are the terms of that capital's usage, right? And then you can determine, like, what's the most efficient way for you to get to it, right? Because at the end of the day, if you're going to do the BRRRR strategy and you're going to buy the property and you're going to rehab it and you're going to refinance, as I said before, on a fix and flip, that could take 90 days to 9 months. Okay, it's the same thing on the BRRRR. It could take maybe 60 days, maybe 30 days to get through the renovation, but then you got to get through the refi type of thing. So, and then so if you do the BRRRR strategy, just to end up in the same position that you would be in if you bought the turnkey property, you saved yourself some headache, maybe some heartache, maybe some sleepless nights, I don't know, maybe some additional stress just to end up in the same position. Save yourself some time, y'all, okay? So there's different ways to be able to purchase homes or houses or properties, single family home investments, besides just putting the 20 or 30% down. You could definitely make that happen. I'm encouraging y'all to do that. You can look at buying subject to the existing financing. You can also look at buying from sellers who are willing to do seller financing for you. But again, how many of those are you going to be doing? How much volume are you going to do? Is that really viable to be able to run your business and grow your business, to rely solely on creative or seller finance transactions? I don't know. My guess is no. So look at adding this to your arsenal, okay? If you truly want to grow, you truly want to stay in business and continue to invest in real estate and do real estate investing, you're going to have to get this stuff sorted out. So the operations is huge. Okay, so again, today, first quarter 2025, I would not wait. There's volatility, there's fear in the air. This is the time where you need to be looking for opportunities. This is where I believe investors, property owners, housing providers can make the biggest impact when others are on the sidelines waiting for things to change or waiting for things to get better. You can find opportunities and you can create opportunities. You can create cash flow opportunities. You can create more opportunities for long-term cash flow and wealth if that's what you want. If you're on this video, if you're watching this video, tune in. If you've seen my stuff, I'm guessing that's probably part of what you want to do in the short term, near term, long term, is creating wealth and freedom from your investments. And if you set up your fix and flip or your BRRRR strategy or your operations a certain way, you can create cash flow from that. If you're paying yourself as an operator and you're paying yourself to oversee projects, okay, that's cash flow too. Driving Uber is cash flow. Work at your job is cash flow. Is it passive? How much time and energy is involved in that? I want y'all to think about this stuff. The time that it takes, the energy that you're pouring into your business, into what you're looking to grow, and hopefully it's producing something that will spit you cash flow each and every month, each and every quarter, because fix and flip renovation projects are amazing. The strategies, the creative financing, all that stuff is great, right? Making large chunks of money, selling a property, doing whatever you do in your real estate is great. But having a higher net worth sounds really, really cool. But what does that really look like? Is that really going to get you the time freedom? If you want peace of mind, okay, if you want wealth, whatever wealth is for you, I would venture to say, and I've seen it from my mentors, okay, one of whom is my dad, another, John Burley, shout out to y'all, okay, and a number of other people I'm involved with. The cash flow that comes in while we're sleeping, whether we get up, go to work or not, despite what our net worth is on paper, it's that cash flow that has set me, or I'm on the path, I'm not completely free yet, but it's allowed my mentors, it's allowed some of my clients and some of my colleagues to truly be able to enjoy freedom from the real estate business, freedom through their real estate business, whether it's, starting off $500 a month, $1,000 a month, $3,000, $5,000 a month, $10,000 a month, going from there, right? $30,000, $50,000 a month from your real estate portfolio, however that looks for you. If you're doing rentals, if you're doing creative financing, like we push for, you can make that happen. And at the end of the day, like if you're getting $10,000, $20,000, $3,000 a month net, right? That's after you split it with your partner or your lender, however you have that set up. Okay, that's life changing. That's positively life altering. I don't think you're necessarily going to be care so much about the renovation project or your net worth. If you're getting $5,000, $3,000, $5,000, $10,000 a month coming in, look, come on now. That's what I'm pushing for. Hoping to encourage y'all to tap into this thing. Again, I know I alluded to seller financing, okay, as a way to create cash flow from your long-term buy and hold investments. And with the BRRRR strategy, I know I touched on long-term rentals, and it might not necessarily be just long-term rentals. It could be short-term rentals or medium-term rentals, okay? And I brought this up in particular because if you've seen my stuff, then you know I push seller financing, okay, of single-family home investments as a way to not only create more home ownership opportunities in your community, but also as a way to create more cash flow or cash flow in general, and allow you to have more time freedom, flexibility with your real estate investments, okay? So the rentals are great. And again, my background is in property management along with the sales. So I've owned some rentals in the past, and I was real quick to turn those into seller finance homes. And that's besides all the rentals that I managed for my clients over the years type of thing. And so again, my perspective is a little different and somewhat unique, coming in with the operations and sales experience first. So you got the rentals, right? And you got seller financing. The cool thing about seller financing is even if you're doing a lease option, it might be some type of seller financing, a contract for deed, or some, a true seller carryback, right? The cool thing about that is you get a larger amount of upfront money than you would on a rental, okay? So on your single family home rental, you're gonna be able to get potentially first month's rent, a deposit, and maybe additional capital, right? And that's it. Usually it's going to be first month's rent and deposit, okay? Again, on the seller financing, even on a lease option or some type of rent to own, you're looking at getting, again, around Kansas City, $200,000 single family home, at least $3,000 to $5,000, maybe $5,000 to $10,000 upfront money that you get to keep, right? Or if you're doing another form of seller financing, in our case, our average down payment is over $20,000, okay? So that's one huge distinction that I have to make when you're looking at rentals and seller finance as a way to create revenue for your real estate investing firm, okay? So with the BRRR and doing the rentals, okay? So I mentioned before that with the BRRR strategy, the buy, the rehab, the rent, the refinance, the repeat, the concept or the idea is when you do your refi, right? Your all-in amount is lower than the 75% that the lender on the back end will give you. So if your all-in amount on the purchase and renovation is at 70% of the after repair value, and the lender, okay, on the back end is going to loan you 75% of the after repair value, then you have a decent spread there and you're able to cash out. Well, again, when you go over budget and past the deadline, how often is that really happening? And I have to say something else with the BRRRR strategy and the rentals, because I know I've met a number of investors who've been able to pull it off. I've been able to pull it off. How often? I don't know. For how long? That's a key part, because if you're doing a rehab and you have to make adjustments and you do end up getting it so the numbers match up, or your all-in amount is lower than the loan amount, and you are able to cash out, how did you make that happen? What kind of corners were cut on the renovation in order for you to hit that amount? That's another thing with fix and flip and the BRRRR strategies. Renovations, investors, okay, human beings, human nature, okay, a tendency for a lot of us is to fudge a little bit. So if you're going to fudge a little bit to make those numbers work, how long is that going to last? Is that going to bite you in the butt later on down the road? Because when you do the perfect BRRRR, so-called perfect BRRRR, where you're able to cash out, get all of your initial investment capital back out, okay, it's one thing if you're doing seller financing, it still might catch up with you at some point in the future. But if you're doing the BRRRR into rentals, again, not saying not everybody does this, but I know a lot of human beings that in order to hit those numbers, they may fudge a little bit and cut corners on the renovation. And if you're keeping the property as a rental, okay, cool. We were able to cash out, but since we did a long-term rental and we have a couple or a family in that rental home, okay, again, it goes back to the operations. At what point is that going to come to light where, okay, there's additional things on the property that we covered up, or the investor covered up, however that looks, in order to get the cash out. So at a later date, whether you've had that single family home investment rented for 3 months or 6 months or a year, when what you cut corners on for the renovation comes out and you have to fix it, then okay, was that really a perfect BRRRR? I guess it was for the time being, but how often is that going to continue to happen? So a big thing that I also have to mention on this video is, again, the reserves and the capital piece, right? So critical. And is that perfect BRRRR, or however much capital you're able to cash out, is it going, there, odds are, if you're owning rentals and managing them, or if you're hiring out, especially if you're hiring out to a third-party property manager, that capital is going to go back into your portfolio or into your business somehow, or into an eviction, hire an attorney, however that shakes out. Okay, so at the end of the day, again, I want to encourage investors to look at the BRRRR strategy and look at turnkey investments and decide, okay, it's cool to do renovations, it's cool to do the refi, it's cool to do that, But at the end of the day, or perhaps the end of the quarter, or at the end of the year, or perhaps 2-3 years out, certain things are going to come up. Okay, you're dealing with people, you're dealing with property. So odds are that you may end up in the same position, or perhaps a worse position than you would have been in if you would have just gone the turnkey route or livable, ready to go homes. All right, so that's one other point that I wanted to hammer home, because I know for sure that I've gotten pushback from investors who say that they don't or will not purchase properties and put 20% down. Fine, have your way at it. But at some point along the way, right, you may have to sell off a rental or sell off a property to, take care of expenses, to take care of, the money that you borrowed because of the extra expenses type of thing. So again, want to bring some clarity and some, realness to what it's like to own and operate a real estate investment company. Okay, especially if you're holding these as rentals. I mentioned seller financing. Y'all know that's my jam. So again, if you want to dig in deeper to how we're making it happen, how we've made it happen, what we're seeing in the future, feel free to holler at me. It's Luther Wilson III. Tap in with me. I appreciate y'all tuning in. Have a blessed day, y'all. All right, peace.